Jamie Gold sat at the final table of the World Series of Poker main event with a smug grin. $12 million on the line, and he knew he was about to take it all. But what the cameras didn't show was the promise he made before the tournament, the one he had no intention of keeping. Across the poker world, ultra-rich pros have pulled off scams so outrageous they make the most ruthless bluffs look honest. Some were subtle, others shameless, but all of them left a trail of deception and disbelief. From a high-stakes legend who hacked his way into opponents' hands to a poker Hall of Famer running one of the longest con games in the industry, these stories are about broken trust, ruined careers, and the dark reality behind poker's brightest lights. This is the side of poker they don't want you to see. Jamie Gold had the perfect hand, not the one he was dealt at the table, but the one he held before the tournament even began. A Hollywood agent with a golden tongue, he'd secured a deal that guaranteed him a free shot at the biggest poker prize in history. All he had to do was win and split the money. But once the cameras flashed and the confetti settled, Jamie Gold was no longer just another poker player. He was a world champion with $12 million in front of him and a backer standing behind him, waiting for his share. That backer was Crispin Leeser, the man who had arranged Jamie's entry into the event in exchange for half of whatever he won. But there was one problem. Jamie wasn't in a sharing mood. Liza had the contract, the text, the proof. But Jamie had something more valuable. The money. As Liza threatened legal action, Jamie did what any self-respecting con artist would do. He played it off like a misunderstanding.
How's it feel to have your lawsuit finally over?
Oh, it's so great. You know, the first moment we sat down, it was all over. It was a misunderstanding from the first place, so there should have never been one in the first place. So it was all really stupid. It's done.
For months, the poker world watched as the drama unfolded in court, Jamie fighting tooth and nail to keep the full $12 million for himself. Eventually, a settlement was reached. The exact terms? Buried. What's clear is that Jamie never really recovered. His post-WSOP poker career never lived up to the hype. His reputation was permanently stained, and despite winning the most iconic event in poker history, he became more of a lesson in what not to do than a champion. And Jamie wasn't alone. Some poker pros built their entire careers on scams so elaborate, they made his look like a schoolyard hustle. Enter Men the Master Nguyen, a man who didn't just cheat the system, he built one of his own. Men wasn't just another tournament grinder, he was a machine, a relentless, unshakable presence at the poker table, racking up wins at a pace that didn't make sense. While other players studied, grinded, and fought for every edge, Men seemed to have a secret no one else did. That secret? He wasn't playing alone. For years, rumors swirled about Men running one of the most sophisticated cheating rings in live poker. His operation wasn't built on card marking or sleight of hand, it was built on people. Dozens of Vietnamese players, all backed by Men, all playing the same tournaments. But their goal wasn't to win, their goal was to make sure he did. The strategy was simple, brutal, and nearly impossible to prove. His students would soft play hands against him, fold in spots they shouldn't, and, when the moment was right, dump chips straight into his stack. If an outsider got involved, they'd get squeezed, bullied, or bluffed out of pots they should have won. And if Men found himself in trouble, his loyal stable made sure he never stayed there for long. It was the kind of cheating that could only work in an era where poker was still the Wild West. No RFID chips, no real-time hand tracking, just the honor system, and Men, he had none. Even when evidence surfaced, when former backers and players came forward to accuse him, Men skated by, tournament after tournament, cash game after cash game. He even made it into the Poker Hall of Fame, a permanent stain on a list that was supposed to represent the game's best. But if Men was running a mafia-style operation in plain sight, Peter Jeppsen was playing a much darker game, one that didn't rely on human greed but on something even more terrifying: technology. Peter Jeppsen was a high-stakes grinder, the kind of player who thrived in the cutthroat world of online poker. But what no one realized, at least not at first, was that Jepsen had an edge no one else did, an edge that had nothing to do with skill. It started as whispers, strange patterns in his play, uncanny reads, the kind of decisions that felt too perfect even for a seasoned pro. But poker is a game of variance, and no one wanted to sound like a sore loser. Until finally, the truth came out. For 6 years, Jepsen had been running a scam so ruthless it made regular cheating look amateur. He was installing malware on the laptops of his high-stakes opponents, giving him real-time access to their hole cards. The method was terrifyingly simple. At major poker tournaments, European Poker Tour stops, high-stakes cash game meetups, Jepsen would gain access to his rivals' laptops, infect them with a Trojan virus, and leave them none the wiser. From that point on, every time they logged into an online poker site, he saw everything. Every bluff, every misstep, every massive pot they never had a chance of winning. He kept this up for years. By the time the Danish authorities finally caught up with him, Jepsen had raked in nearly $4 million in stolen winnings. But the sentence? Just 2 years in prison, a slap on the wrist for one of the biggest online poker crimes ever committed. Jepsen proved that in the digital age, cheating wasn't just about sleight of hand or hidden signals. It was about something far more dangerous: complete control. And that's exactly what Max Ashgar thought he had when he turned his own scam into a multi-million-dollar heist. But unlike Jepsen, he was about to get caught in the most humiliating way possible. Max Ashgar had a simple plan. Too simple, really. He wasn't going to outplay his opponents. He wasn't even going to bluff them. He was just going to see their cards. It started in the high-stakes scene of Europe, where trust was the unspoken currency. Players traveled together, stayed in the same hotels, partied at the same events. And that's exactly where Ashgar made his move. All it took was a USB stick, a quick moment of distraction, maybe a request to borrow a laptop to check his email. He'd plug in the drive, install a Trojan virus, and walk away like nothing had happened. The moment his victims logged into their poker sites, it was over. The virus gave Ashgar real-time access to their screens, meaning every time they played, he knew exactly what they were holding. He didn't need skill, he didn't need luck, he just needed them to keep playing, and they did, for months. But arrogance is a funny thing. Ashgar thought he was untouchable. He thought no one would ever put the pieces together. That is, until 2 of his victims sat down for a drink. A simple conversation, comparing notes, and suddenly the dots connected. Both players had lost massive sums in bizarre, impossible ways. Both had let Ashgar use their laptops. Both were staying at the same hotel. So they set a trap. During a major tournament in Austria, they lured Ashgar into a hotel room under the guise of a friendly meetup. Once inside, they confronted him head-on. The scammer panicked and confessed on the spot. But poker players don't call the cops. They settle things their own way. They gave him an ultimatum: pay back what he stole, or his reputation would be obliterated. Ashgar took his chances. He denied everything to the authorities, but it was too late. The online poker community had already blacklisted him. His accounts were frozen, his connections were gone. In the world of high-stakes poker, a cheater with no one to scam is as good as dead. And Ashgar wasn't the only one who thought he could cheat under the radar. One online poker community had thousands of players scammed by a fraud so subtle, most didn't even realize it until it was too late. The blonde poker staking scandal wasn't about hacking, it was about trust and what happens when it's shattered. Any poker player who's ever been staked knows one thing: if you're going to get scammed, this is how it happens. The backing system is built on trust, and trust is the easiest thing to exploit. Usually these scams are small time, pulled off by degenerates who gamble away their investors' money at the casino. But Neil Blatchley, he took it to another level. In 2010, the UK poker forum Blonde Poker was a respected community, a place where serious players connected, built relationships, and pooled resources. And for years, Neil Blatchley was one of the good guys. A long-time forum member, he had credibility, reputation, and a voice people listened to. So when he started a staking thread, offering investors a chance to back his sports betting system, people didn't hesitate. Over 40 investors poured money into the operation, building a bankroll of £70,000 under the assumption that Blatchley knew what he was doing. And for a while, it looked like he did. Week after week, Blatchley posted updates, reporting tens of thousands of pounds in profit. He talked about the bets, the strategy, the winning streaks. Investors were thrilled. On paper, everything looked perfect. But that was the trick. It was all on paper. For months, there were no bets, no system, just lies. Blatchley was fabricating his results, covering up the fact that the money was already gone. Some of it was lost in casino games. The rest, personal expenses. A luxury vacation in Miami with his entire family, funded by his backers' money. When the first investors started asking questions, they were mocked by the community. How dare you question him? He's been around forever. Let the man work. But then came the post. The moment when Blatchley couldn't lie anymore. The money was gone, every penny. His excuse: he just wanted to win it back before anyone noticed. What happened next was exactly what you'd expect. Blonde Poker was thrown into chaos. Investors were furious, demanding refunds that would never come. Blatchley was blacklisted, his name permanently tied to one of the biggest staking scams in poker history. But the real lesson: online reputation means nothing when there's no accountability, and if poker players weren't paranoid enough already, the next scam would make them rethink everything. Because what happened to Jens Kalonen in Barcelona wasn't about money, it was about invasion, and it proved that in the high-stakes world, the real danger isn't just online, it's right outside your door. Jens arrived in Barcelona for what was supposed to be just another high-stakes poker tournament, a routine stop on the European Poker Tour. Same hotels, same faces, same high-stakes action, but what he walked into was something far more sinister. It started with a simple inconvenience. Kalonen returned to his hotel room at the Yachts Hotel, one of the most luxurious in Barcelona, only to find that his keycard wouldn't work. Weird, but nothing alarming. He went to the front desk, got a new key, and walked inside. That's when the first alarm bell rang. His laptop was gone. Panic set in. He scanned the room, checked his bags, his belongings. Then, just as quickly as it had vanished, the laptop reappeared, sitting right there in plain sight. Something was off. Kalonen wasn't an amateur. He knew that laptop wasn't just misplaced. Someone had been in his room. Someone had taken it, done something to it, and put it back. And the fact that they didn't bother hiding it, that was a message. At first, the hotel staff played dumb. No forced entry, no reports of disturbances. But Kalonen wasn't the only player who had noticed strange activity that week. Multiple high-stakes pros at the EPT event had similar stories. Laptops mysteriously disappearing and reappearing. Hotel keycards suddenly failing. And then it hit him. This wasn't random. If someone had access to his laptop, they had access to his online poker accounts, his passwords, his bankroll, and that meant every time he logged in, he could be getting hacked in real time. The theory: remote access malware. Whoever broke in had likely installed a Trojan, one that would give them full visibility over his screen every time he played. His hole cards, his actions, his entire strategy. Kalonen immediately wiped his computer and warned others, but the bigger question remained: who was behind this? Was it an inside job from the hotel? A professional poker cheating ring targeting high rollers? To this day, no one knows for sure, but one thing was certain: this wasn't just an online problem anymore. Poker cheating had left the digital world and moved into real life. And the next scam on the list, it was just as bold, just as insidious, but this time, the cheaters weren't breaking into hotel rooms. The Cannes infrared lens scam, a cheating method so flawless, players had no chance of defending themselves. The Cannes infrared lens scam was cheating on another level, a mix of high-tech espionage and old-school con artistry. It happened at the Partouche Poker Tour in Cannes, where a group of cheaters used marked cards and infrared contact lenses to see what no one else could. The plan was simple. A corrupt dealer introduced the marked decks, and a scammer wearing special lenses could see hidden markings that revealed every player's hand. No bluffs, no tough decisions, just perfect information and a guaranteed edge. At first, it worked flawlessly. The cheaters crushed games, winning massive pots without raising suspicion. But greed is always the downfall. When losses became too consistent, tournament organizers investigated. The cards were checked, the markings were found, and the scam collapsed instantly. By then, the damage was done. Tens of thousands of euros stolen. But this wasn't the first time poker had been infiltrated by tech-savvy scammers. Because if these guys used infrared lenses, the next con men needed nothing more than a chat message. And their victims? Patrik Antonius and Johnny Lodden, two of the biggest names in poker. Patrik and Lodden weren't the kind of players who got hustled. They were sharp, battle-tested pros who had seen it all. But in the early days of online poker, one scam slipped right through the cracks, and it cost them millions. It started with a new player on the scene, a fearless high-stakes grinder who wasn't afraid to battle anyone. He played against Antonius and Lodden, taking them on in brutal heads-up matches. Eventually, he suggested they move their conversation to MSN Messenger, a casual offer, nothing unusual. What they didn't know? That message was the setup. The scammer was a hacker, and the moment Antonius and Lodden accepted, their computers were infected with a Trojan virus. Every time they sat down to play, he could see their hole cards in real time. At first, the losses just felt like bad luck. A few rough sessions, some unlucky bluffs, but then, the losses started piling up, way too fast. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. The scammer had already stolen over $3 million, and just like that, he disappeared. Never caught, never identified. This wasn't just a poker scam, it was a wake-up call. A reminder that in high-stakes poker, your biggest opponent might not even be at the table. And that's what makes these scams so terrifying. Some are built on deception, some on technology, but in the end, they all prove the same thing. In poker, trust is the biggest gamble of all. Poker is a brutal game. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not adapting, if you're not staying ahead of the curve, you're dead money. Click here to see the poker pros who can't beat the game anymore, and why their once dominant strategies now leave them at the mercy of the competition.